thank you so much, obviously, for having me today. Just shared my screen. Just want to walk, obviously, through some slides here, highlighting what PropTech is, what's happening in this space, and just give the audience a little bit of better depth. Obviously, what's happening in that ecosystem. It's still very young. I think it's probably worth noting that it's the largest asset class in the world, right? So it's obviously real estate is massive. So we see a lot of activity in this space. And just to give you a little bit of feel where we play as a business, we have 15,000 PropTechs. So just to give you a quantum of scale of companies in various stages and various geographies in our database, all doing something different, because one of the key challenges in PropTech is defining it. So that I will highlight that in my next slide. We cover 90 countries, have access to a large pool of investors that actively are deploying capital, and then also a lot of assets behind it. So just to give you a feel where these PropTechs are located globally, so the 15,000 we think are in the market. The majority are US based, and then shortly followed by Europe and also the Asia Pacific region. In the Middle East, we see also now a lot of capital from some large sovereign wealth funds pouring into this space, starting to explore how to get into PropTech, what is it, and how obviously can it get to an ROI for some of their objectives. And I think one of the key things that we always think is very challenging is defining it. So it's a very broad definition, right? So it's basically all technology in the built environment. So the things that always come to mind in real estate, you have obviously a lot of different asset classes, right? You have a lot of different verticals. It's very broad. So it's from airports to commercial office space, residential, and everything in between. Then another challenge that we see is that it's very localized. So different regions have different macro drivers and therefore also different PropTech solutions. So what we, for example, see in the market is that established winners in markets like the US or Europe are now, let's say, copycats in more underserved markets like Africa or Latam. And obviously with the right capital partner and executing strategy can actually deliver and take a big market share pretty quickly. You see a large disconnect between the technology buyer, which is obviously typically the real estate company or general contractor or an engineering group, is often not the end user, right? Because the tenant in an asset is the user, but the buyer is basically the owner of the asset. So there's a large disconnect, highly fragmented market. I'm not going to walk through all of this, but these are some of the challenges that we see. I think another thing that I wanted to highlight, it's not homogeneous. So you see, for example, just to give you a feel, it's very siloed market. It's extremely inefficient. And that's also why we actually set up our business. And just to give you a feel, in Nigeria, for example, if you are a renter, you have to pay your rent 12 months up front in advance, so 1 year in advance, plus a 25% commission fee. In Europe or the US, that would be outrageous. And because of that, you see obviously a lot of technologies that are already established, let's say in the Western markets, now coming in to some of those regions and obviously really addressing a large pain point. Just some metrics, some data here, some insights that we think are relevant. You see a lot of unicorns now coming in. See a lot of these guys are going to IPO. We think that PropTech is much stickier than a lot of tech like fintech or whatever you're looking at. It's real estate is very much relationship driven, also on the investor side. So in order to make it to a series B or C, if you're able to get there, it's a much higher likelihood that you will actually make it all the way through to an IPO. And also, you have these RFP process that typically, last for 5 years. So once you're in a real estate company, it's very sticky and you most probably will stay there. So capital is pouring in at large scale. You see a lot of generic VC funds starting to look and deploy capital into PropTech. We see serious capital being raised all across the globe. I guess I'll walk through this. Just some of the thematics that we see. The quantum of capital is in the US, but you see a much higher risk appetite from US investors to deploy capital in different markets, Europe and APAC for that matter. 50% of all construction spend in the upcoming decade is going to be in Asia Pacific, so in countries like Indonesia, India, Vietnam, Philippines, Japan. So we think that's a very big opportunity. Valuations are all-time high because of obviously macro drivers. Interest rates are probably going up, so we see some challenges across the board. The scale of some of these PropTechs, how quickly they can scale is very significant. So you have Procore is a publicly listed company. 2018, They did $180 million in revenue. Last year alone, they acquired for $800 million in the US alone. So just to give you a feel of quantum, here are some of the multiples that we see in the market. I won't touch this too deep, but I think what is important here is that a lot is being driven by some of the macro drivers that we see in the market. So obviously one of the key metrics here is COVID. So you see a direct impact on, for example, just to give you a feel, a lot of empty office space in central business districts in large cities. And what you then see across the globe is that a lot of these techs are coming in and actually transforming, let's say, office space into affordable housing or co-living or co-working spaces. So what's happening on a macro scale has a direct impact on what we see on the ground, to say. So yeah, it's a very interesting space, a very disconnected space as well. And we think PropTech should be a key part of every real estate company's strategy. You see now that real estate companies are becoming brands. You do see that the large tech companies in the Bay Area, let's say, are not active in commercial real estate, but we believe they are coming, and they probably are going to come soon. So it's a very exciting time to be in this space. Just wanted to highlight some issues. Looking at the clock, also want to make sure that we have some time left for questions and Q&A with the entire audience here. So yeah, hope this was helpful. And I guess I hand it back over to the team.
Thank you so much.